On today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
I think if you're an entrepreneur, you've made lots of mistakes. We had an opportunity to partner with another company, it was, it all seemed so good. We didn't really vet that company, quite honestly, and it came back to bite us later. We win a contract, everything is great, it's a year in. I'm getting ghosted by the owner of this other company, who is the prime contractor. We're a subcontractor. So I'm calling, I'm emailing, I'm texting, zero response. At that time, it was like half of our company working on this contract. And so they took our positions and booted us off the contract, and we had like zero recourse. And so I had to lay off 5 people right before the holidays.
Wow.
And that was devastating. I mean, I remember, this is like 15 years ago, and I remember it to this day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Chaz Wolfe, Gathering the Kings podcast. I'm your host, back at you here today, King Stage. But I've got an incredible queen here on the King Stage. What a background this one has. Carla James, welcome. I cannot wait. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chaz. It's great to be here.
Yeah, real quick here before I let you tell us all of your awesome history here. But Carla, for the listeners, Carla asked me a few minutes ago. So I know this is called Gathering the Kings, but and so in true queen fashion, making it a point to be different. Although, king is mindset and queens have the mindset that kings do as well. But Carla, you have an incredible background and some immense success. I want the listeners to buckle in because there's no king or queen talk here. This is just straight boss. You are incredible. So, Carla, what kind of business do you have?
Thanks, Chaz. So I am the CEO of Solidus Technical Solutions. We are an engineering services firm operating in the government contracting space. So GovCon, as we say in the biz.
Yep.
And I'll try not to use too many acronyms today because we love acronyms in the government. So,
yeah. Well, you got to keep things simple, right? And that's what smart people do. I don't know what the listeners feel like, but when you said aerospace, engineering, it just sounds really smart. And for guys like me, I'm just honored to be here in the conversation here at the table. So, Carla, tell us inside of all of those words that you just used, what is it that you guys do?
So in a nutshell, what we're doing is providing government organizations with technical expertise. And we are strictly in the engineering space. So my product is people. So I provide highly skilled engineers, whether it's a mechanical engineer or a software engineer, network engineer, on and on, to government agencies to help them meet their mission. Wow.
Yeah, you're looking for the best of the best. You have the best of the best. Yeah. Let's say it like that, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so there's and not just even in talented individuals, but you've built large teams, very large businesses, and so let's jump into it here. Before we get into your business history, though, I want to know for Carla, individually, the queen, what's burning on the inside? Why are you doing this? What's in it for you?
Well, one of the reasons I just mentioned that we help organizations meet their mission, and our biggest client really is DoD, Department of Defense. And so at the end of the day, we're helping to secure national security. Right. So when you step back and you think about that, that's pretty impactful.
Yeah.
And I previously was serving in the Air Force, so I have that sort of sense of mission and purpose kind of instilled at me at a fairly young age. So I'm driven to mission-oriented organizations, such as the one that I'm working for now, and that's what really gets me out of bed every day is having that mission. Securing national security doesn't get more real than that.
Yeah. There's no fluffing the mission there. It's like protecting us, like literally.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
When you say you're mission driven, from a person listening here today, maybe they're a big business owner, maybe they're a CEO, maybe they're just getting started and in their entrepreneur journey. What does that mean? And has it always meant the same thing to you, to be mission driven?
I think it's something, like I said, that I kind of learned through the Air Force. Obviously we're a for-profit company, so we have to worry about the bottom line as well. But, helping these organizations to deliver, whether it's a new weapon system or software or, whatever that solution is, the idea that, we're part of that mission, that I can instill a purpose into, my team that adds value to that organization is really, what drives us. And I do think it's something that I've always had within me from a pretty early age is, like mission and purpose kind of align for me. And I think it helps not only the organization as a whole, but I think individuals want a purpose, right? So it just makes us better as an organization, and then we're making our client better because we're actually delivering what they want.
Yeah, obviously there's probably a large depth of that for you to the Air Force. First off, thank you for your service. Secondly, what do you think inside of that? Like, I mean, obviously there was ritual, and there was a lot of just like probably just discipline that you learned through that process. But as far as like being mission or purpose, other than like going on a mission, right? Outside of that tactical piece, but like more internal, what did the Air Force give you, or maybe was it before that the Air Force pulled out of you? You know what I mean? Like that was the internal mission piece.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I can say I think the Air Force sort of saved me.
Wow.
It gave me discipline and direction that I, was severely lacking. You make friends there, peers that become lifelong, friends. But really the discipline and the direction were things that I really needed and craved, and I got it there. And then, sort of that sense of purpose as well. There's, service before self is one of the sayings, and those are all things that just have stuck with me. I served 8 years, so it wasn't a whole career, but it was long enough to be very impactful, obviously, to my forward journey where I am today.
Yeah, you spoke to just that you had a craving for it. I think that all humans do, right? And that was how you were able to kind of scratch that itch, if you will. But it ended for you, even though 8 years isn't a quick period. That specific piece ended for you. How did you carry what you learned in that as far as being mission oriented through? Like, because a lot of times when things end like that, it's like, what do I do now? And it's hard to carry it forward, especially for you into business being so successful.
Well, I think it's just part of my intrinsic core now. It's kind of who I am. There's always the next mission. It might not be serving in the Air Force, but there's always a mission behind, everything you do. Yes, it's not like we're going to go out and on, patrol kind of mission, but there is something you could do, whether it's, in a volunteer organization or, a company like mine where, we are for profit. I think it's just finding that purpose wherever you go to the next stage. And I just always have been fortunate enough to find purpose and meaning in most of the organizations I've been part of. And if I haven't, I've honestly just moved on.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you said it best at the beginning there. You said it's just in me now. And so they ingrained it into you, or you allowed it to be ingrained. You accepted it into your subconscious so deep that it just is how you operate. Let's fast forward here a little bit. So you come out of the Air Force. Tell us, how does that connect with what you do today? What's the gap here? What'd you do?
Well, initially I was working for the government. I was a government employee for a few years. And then I was in the DC metro area, so there's tons of organizations there, obviously supporting government agencies. After a few years of working for the government, I sort of had like this epiphany as like, kind of what am I doing in my life sort of mentality.
Sure.
I don't really see myself sitting in this cube for
a little bit of loss of mission.
Yes, exactly, 100%. And so I went out searching for, my next mission, and I found that, and then that leapfrogged me to start a business with somebody else back in around 2007-ish. And, all those things kind of led me where I am today.
Yeah. Okay. So you did some leapfrogging there, even in your story, which is fine. You started a business.
Yeah.
You've since had a whole track record. Your husband was actually on the show here as well. He's, a successful entrepreneur as well, and And so this house, this James house is just a winning couple and winning family. Tell me about the process of you building that business with that person. Obviously, you're in the next thing now, but all the while, give me like what that was maybe like at the beginning. But I also want like just keep in mind like you having another high performer in the house and maybe what that was like at the same time, being new in business. You know what I mean?
Sure. Well, the business that I started back in 2007, unfortunately, my husband was not in my life quite yet, but a coworker and I started that company basically because we were working for a small business that was wonderful. It was like 200 people. The owner knew our names. He would like sometimes get down in the weeds and work on spreadsheets with us. And at some point he decided it was time to sell, and he did, to a very large company. So we went from 200 to 12,000 overnight.
Yeah.
As you imagine, the culture changed significantly. So it was about a year or so after that acquisition. And so a coworker came to me and said, hey, I have this idea about starting a company. And I was kind of like, good for you. And she said, well, I was thinking, maybe, do you want to be my business partner? And I was like, yeah, like, what do I have to lose? Like, worst case scenario, I go back to work for the man, And so we, the two of us, started in 2008 officially. And when I left in 2016, we were approaching 100 people.
Wow.
So it was.
Tell us about the moment of her saying, hey, I want to start this company. And you're like, yeah, you go. But it was like an invitation. Like, were you dumbfounded?
Right.
Was that like, wait a second? I mean, you kind of just were like, what do I have to lose? But I mean, that's a big switch. You weren't thinking, how do I get in on that?
No. And it was like funny. Like we were like, I think we went to happy hour, and like we literally were at the bar like with a napkin. So
I love that.
it was sort of like right time, right place sort of situation because as I said, that acquisition had been about a year, and the new company was okay, but I wasn't really thrilled with it. I went from being Carla to like P252. And the contract the contract I was on wasn't really super rewarding. I was working the Pentagon, which seems very cool, but after a year, it was a little dull. So, and it was just a matter, I think, of we can do this. Like, let's give it a try. And as I said, if I had to go back to work, I could find a job.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think in that moment? Because what's the worst case scenario? Let's just jump, see what happens. We've all been through that. Everybody listening here today has been through some form of that. And it's actually what unites almost every single entrepreneur is just that at some point you said, and you jump and you see what happens. For you, what do you think gave you the logic? Because, I mean, you're just saying it so logically. You're just like, well, worst case scenario, I go back to work and blah, 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 no big deal. And where maybe others would have like overanalyzed and like, run spreadsheets. Because again, that's probably what you're pretty good at. And so you could have like, really torn into the numbers and projected out the next 50 years. And is this going to work? And what's all the risk analysis? But it didn't sound like you did that. Tell us.
No, I did not, and I'm not risk averse by nature. So I think that's part of it. I don't want to say I'm fearless because as I get older, I do have fears, but I think I've been pretty fearless in life and not afraid of change, kind of getting outside of my comfort zone. When I think I may have skipped over this, but when I was working for the government and I decided to leave the government, everyone was like, "You're crazy. The government's so stable. Why would?" And it takes a while to get into the government. So everyone's like, "Oh, I can't believe you're leaving the government." Well, that ended up being one of the best decisions of my life because the company that I went to go work for, that small company I told you about, was amazing. I met, great people. It was super rewarding work. And, oh, by the way, when that owner sold the company, he gave all of his employees a little windfall. And then I met my soon-to-be business partner. So, when you think back, like, some things seem scary or risky, but it's paid off for me. So maybe it wasn't as scary. And like I said, I kind of think of myself as a risk-averse person by nature.
Yeah, and so for the person listening right now who maybe isn't, right, and they're a little bit more of the calculated, I don't know, what would you say to them that they could lean into to be, because you kind of do it naturally, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs do, but for the ones that are a little bit more not, what would you suggest for them?
Be courageous. There you have to try new things, and like I just said, getting out of your comfort zone is really the only way you're going to grow. And
Yeah.
I would just, challenge yourself, be courageous, and just try it.
Yeah, I want to suggest, and I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are. I want to suggest that you were courageous in that moment and you were just willing to take the leap. But it seems as if maybe you just had a certain level of confidence in you, not necessarily in the situation or in the business, but that you were just like, you know what? I'll figure it out. And worst case scenario, you even gave yourself, well, me figuring it out in the worst case scenario is that I have skills and I'm confident in those, and I would just go work for somebody else. And, it is what it is. For me, I'm hearing your like kind of rational or logical decision making being tied to your confidence, either A, in your skill set or in you. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Yeah. I would say I always land on my feet. So
Yeah.
yes, that I would say you are correct.
Well, it makes it like when you're deciding like how risky is this, but you're like, well, if I know I'm going to land on my feet, it's not that you don't look at it close enough, but you just, I'm going to land on my feet. Let's just figure it out, right?
Correct. Yes.
Was your business partner like this also, or was it a little bit of yin and yang?
No. I would say she was even more confident than I was. I was the introvert of the partnership, and she was the extrovert. So,
Okay.
she just exuded confidence.
Yeah, well, and so I'm sure some of that played into it as well. Your confidence towards her and her confidence towards you. It's funny too because, and I don't know, maybe share here, but sometimes the extroverted, show hosts. I mean, not me. Sorry, your partner. That's what I mean. Sometimes those of us who appear to be really confident and extroverted really are just needing a little bit of validation from somebody who we believe to be really smart or good at what they do. And so I don't know, do you think like in that moment, her asking you, like you being interested was like her saying, okay, like this is a good idea. She wants to be with me. I feel stronger with her being with me. Do you think that?
I think that's part of it. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
like she definitely like got energy from other people. And I think that validation was part of it.
Yeah, of course. Okay, well, give me something super practical inside of that business or inside of the business that you're running now, either one. I want to know if it's just a really good decision that you've made that's led to a lot of your success that you can share.
Well, I think I kind of touched on a little while ago about, my decision to leave kind of a cushy government job. That I could still be there, 20 years. I could have stayed there my entire career and been perfectly fine, safe, kind of recession proof. You're working for the US government. And I probably would have, moved up the ladder a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
But, I think it's important for, if an opportunity presents itself or you're not feeling a purpose anymore to, look for something where you're going to have impact. And if I hadn't left that job and gotten the job that I did, I probably would not have been an entrepreneur and running a business. I probably would have never have taken that leap, quite honestly.
Yeah.
So, making that change, like, being courageous and kind of stepping outside of my comfort zone, leaving something safe and stable, has really propelled me to where I am today, to now running another company as a CEO, getting to, start my own business, having a successful run at that, kind of leaving on my own when the time was right, to where I am now. All those things occurred because I, got out of my comfort zone, left a kind of a stable environment, and
Yeah.
here I am today.
Yeah, and obviously there's different people listening here, entrepreneurs, maybe even team members. I have a lot of salespeople that listen to the call, and maybe even some of your team members listening. But the reality here is that you're saying to find purpose, like get out of your comfort zone to find what's fulfilling. For some, it'll be entrepreneurship. For some, it's a different department. For some, it's a different company because the one that they're in right now isn't fulfilling them purpose-wise. Am I on the right track with you for the listener here?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. You said it great. I think, purpose and meaning. I mean, we spend so much of our time at work, so
Yeah.
you want to make it purposeful.
Yeah, absolutely. What about a bad decision? Let's flip the coin. I want to hear of, you're pretty calculated. Let's talk about something that was not your greatest hour.
Oh, I can give you many examples. I think if you're an entrepreneur, you've made lots of mistakes.
Yeah.
I could think of one very early in our company that I started. You're young and you're your company. You're looking for work, obviously. Government contracting can be mind-boggling and frustrating. It happens very slowly too. So we had an opportunity to partner with another company, and it was, it all seemed so good, and we didn't really vet that company, quite honestly, and it came back to bite us later. So we get into a partnership with this company, we win a contract, everything is great, it's a year in, and the government typically does, 5-year contracts, a base year, and then they exercise options after that. So government exercise option, all right, we're in, and I'm getting ghosted by the owner of this other company, who is the prime contractor. We're a subcontractor. So I'm calling, I'm emailing, I'm texting, zero response.
Wow.
And I have 5 employees. At that time, it was like half of our company working on this contract. And so, I mean, the end of it is basically they took our positions and booted us off the contract, and we had like zero recourse. I mean, we found out later that this company was very litigious. The owner had sued her own employees on several occasions. And our law firm was like, you really don't have any chance of winning, and it's going to, cost you a lot of time and money. And so I had to lay off 5 people right before the holidays.
Wow.
And that was devastating. I mean, I remember, this is like 15 years ago, and I remember it to this day, how impactful that was on us. And so, going forward, we were a lot more, trust but verify approach to getting to, partnerships with other companies. And, that was just a hard lesson learned, but luckily it happened early. So, going forward, there's, a lot more vetting going on.
Yeah. Hey, kings and queens, Chaz Wolfe. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other. Let's help each other grow. Well, and a lot of those mistakes do happen early, like you're saying, because we don't know any different.
Right.
And so we cross the path, and that happens. And then we either learn from it and it doesn't happen again, or we don't learn from it and it basically just destroys us eventually. But okay, so for you, there's a little bit of a vetting process, probably some legal, some contracts, that you just do better. What did you learn from a people perspective? Like, had to lay off people, you were dealing with this person that you obviously thought was trustworthy, but then wasn't. Like, I mean, you've led a lot of people now. What did you learn about people through that whole circumstance?
Well, I mean, I like to think that most people are good, at their core. But
Sure.
again, that trust but verify. And, one thing that I've sort of, as I've, gotten older and been in this business for a while, a lot of it is like your gut, like kind of trust your gut. Back in that situation, I did have a little bit of hesitation, but, we were eager and, we needed to work, right? So you just sort of like jump in and like that didn't work out. So, a gut check is always a good thing, but also like doing some due diligence. I think for the most part, people are, good, and I've had so many amazing, employees and partners throughout the years. But every now and then you have a bad apple, and you just have to be on the lookout for them, and hopefully you recognize it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I think that you're spot on with that. What are some of those maybe telltales, those little red flags along the way that spike your interest now before it gets there, that you're like, I don't know about this? What are those things that you're paying attention to?
Well, one of the things with usually people like in leadership roles or, excuse me, or, upper management, if they're not humble, that's usually a sign
Yeah.
for me. If they have kind of a ego,
Yeah.
a big ego, that's a sign for me. Those are two very big telltale signs for me. As
How does
far
that
as
come across in a conversation or in a Zoom meeting? Like, how do you're like, oh, that person's, arrogant, or, how do you translate that?
Obviously being very boastful. And in this industry, it's all about, what your team does. Like I am not on a client site delivering a software package.
Sure,
I have no
exactly.
idea. I can probably describe it to you, but I can never actually do that work. And so when you have, someone that's running a team or an executive talk about I all the time, or they don't really know anything about their people, that's telling. You can ask me, I have 100 folks. I can probably tell you a little something about each one of them. And I think that's important, especially when you're a small business. So, it's that whole mentality of it's all about me. And when I talk, I try to talk about my team and what we've done, and try to be inclusive.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there's just a maturity at some point, because we all start there with the I, the me. It's just natural. But I think for the ones that what you're saying that we're looking out for, it's not that they've not grown out of it. They're just on the other side of the track, a little bit maybe more malicious about it, and that's a telltale. You're 100% right. It could also be a telltale for someone who just hasn't matured enough, and they're not necessarily evil perspective, but or per se. But I think that those are great things. What about, because you've raised up so many people in these different organizations, for the person that I'm kind of describing right now who has some of those arrogant, maybe prideful, boastful, about me stuff, but they just haven't matured. And how have you helped them mature? How have you walked them through? Have you seen them come through it to the other side and become a great leader?
Well, I think, I'm trying to think of somebody that I know that may have, gone through this, but
Sure.
I think one of the things I tell people is, listening is a skill. So, listen more than you talk. Be an active listener, I think, is important, to hear people, to hear what they're saying. I think that's helpful, to kind of grow and mature, and think more about the we than the I.
Yeah.
I'm trying to, I can't think of anybody I know off the top of my head that I've seen kind of transition that way, but I'm sure there are somebody.
Well, let me do some active listening here, and ask you, what does active listening look like for you? Because you're right. Someone might be hearing you speak right now, but they're not listening. Or maybe it's the reverse. They're listening, but they're not hearing. I don't know. They're not getting it.
Right. Well, so first of all, you don't talk, right? You're listening, so you're sitting back, and so I say, Chaz, tell me how things are going today, or what's going on at work, what's new with you. You tell me, and then I repeat. So what I'm hearing you say is X, Y, and Z, to make sure that I actually heard what you were saying. I think kind of like repeating, rephrasing what you heard to that person to ensure that you actually are getting the message of what they're saying to you. When I meet with my team, I try to do like one-on-ones and, how are things going? What's going on with you? And they'll, tell me. And so I say, oh, do you need help with what you told me about? Do you need help with X? How about Y? And I think, like I said, sort of, repeating, rephrasing what you heard to make sure that you're actually hearing what they're saying is really important.
Yeah, you gave some really, really good practicals there. The one thing that I heard you say that you didn't say with your words was that you cared. Because you're sitting in that meeting with a person, you, as a human, saw another human, and there's work to be done, and we're talking about the project and X, Y, Z. But you also said, how are things going? Do you need help? A leader that is paying attention, or that isn't all about me, is constantly focused on those that are around them, like you're talking about. And Carla's giving you guys, as far as listeners, some really, really practicals here. But inside that meeting, if Carla didn't care, even if she was asking those questions, it would come across as disingenuous. And we all know what that feels like. We all know what that feels like, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a really important fact is like, I do care and I do want to know. And I try to start every meeting with, how are things going? Tell me about your weekend or, because I want to know, I'm interested. I want to know the people that I'm spending a good portion of my day with.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a difference. We've all been in the meeting where you talk about the quote unquote weekend or whatever because it's the corporate thing as opposed
Right.
to like I know your family, right? I
Right.
know the name of your husband or your wife or your children, and when you tell me that you guys went to a water park this weekend, I can envision you with, your husband and your kids, going to the water park. So it's real, is what you're saying.
Yes, exactly.
How does that look different in an organization of 100 versus when you first got started and it was just you and your partner and maybe one or two people that you brought on?
Well, yeah, it's entirely different. I mean, back in the early days of that company that I co-founded, basically every person that worked for us was somebody that we had worked with before or that we personally knew was a friend. And it wasn't until we got to about 20 where they were no longer like our inner circle people.
Sure.
So, as you expand, you have less and less, personal connection with with the employees that you're bringing on. And so it's not as personal, but you try to have a connection with somebody. Like you said, I know that you're a boating guy, so I love boats, so we're going to chat about boats because I do want to make a connection and I want it to feel genuine. I don't want it to be like a forced corporate spiel, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
it is harder, obviously, as the numbers grow, and especially like we are a remote company. All of our employees are in different places on different client sites. So, trying to bring people together, to do some events where they can bring their families and, just try to get to know people. But it is a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Lot of layers there that maybe an office would solve, but you can't because you're in different locations. In fact, I love the remote piece. I think that technology just allows for that. So,
Right.
I want to transition here a little bit. I want you to tell me of just a business resource that you've used over the course of years. Maybe it's a book, maybe it's, a podcast that you like to listen to, or just some sort of a event that you've been to, something that you've invested into that's given you great feedback that we could go download or buy or attend.
Well, I'm an avid reader. That's one of my favorite things to do. I read a ton. I usually have 2 or 3 books going at a time. So usually like one for fun and then, a couple of business books. So,
Okay.
and I
What's
listen
the
to
best one?
webinars too, but I think one of the books that really I would recommend is Start With Why by Simon Sinek.
Yeah, great book.
That book to me, we talked a lot about purpose today. So, I mean, I think that book kind of lays out like, what is your why? Why are you here? Why are you showing up every day and get out of bed? So I think that's sort of like a foundational book that I've read that really, I think, across any industry would be useful for folks. And he also has a great podcast too. But, that one, and I go back to way back in the day. One of the first business books I ever read was Good to Great by Jim Collins. And
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a classic. I think it's withstand the test of time. So
It is.
I'm a big fan of reading, so I encourage all my folks to read. Just be curious and read.
Yeah, that last little be curious. I mean, that's the ticket, right? It doesn't. I mean, I like to read also, but I like to listen, and of course we produce podcasts with highly successful people like you. So, and I've been to many of events, and we host events, and so it's like you just have to be hungry. Really, I think is what we can both agree on.
Yeah.
What about I want to go back to the family dynamic here because, like I said, your husband was on the show a couple months ago, and great coffee business, and the dynamic between not just one entrepreneur in the home, but two, is heavy. And so my question to you is specifically around what might be considered work-life balance in this regular world. I don't like the word balance at all. In fact, I don't even agree with it. I think obsession is a better word. And so if we were to say work-life obsession, we obsess over our business, we obsess over our people, we obsess over our family, our marriage, fill in the blank. And
Right.
I find when I'm not obsessing of whatever that area is, it's not that I need to take away from the other thing and balance it. I just need to obsess about the thing that I say that's important to me. So for you, especially having a super high performing husband as well, what does that look like? What does work-life obsession look like for you guys? How do you do it?
Well, I would say work-life integration.
There you go. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're both running businesses, we're both busy, but the fun thing is having someone at home that I can bounce ideas off of or talk to about, like having, because I mean, being a CEO can be lonely. So
Yeah.
actually having,
You get to go home to your own mastermind.
right, exactly, and it's been helpful for both of us, to bounce
bet.
ideas off or have someone to vent to because you can't really vent to your employees, right? So
right.
it's been it's wonderful, and like I said, there's an integration aspect. So we do events. He's in the coffee industry, so there's food and beverage events. I'm lucky I get to attend, and they're for work, but they're also you're having fun too, right? Because you're
Yeah.
drinking some great coffee and you're meeting interesting people.
Right.
I get to go to Costa Rica to a coffee farm with him, so it's
Yeah.
it's I think it's about understanding that they are going to be intertwined. There is no such thing as work-life balance. I agree with you, and I think we're both really good about knowing, like, okay, I'm getting burnt out. I need to take a break. Like, let's go for a hike. We're big hikers, so that's kind of our little escape and brain break. But I feel very fortunate, like I said, that I have Craig to talk to, because it's great having your own mastermind at home, and
Yeah.
and when he was making the jump, and I'm sure he talked about, like, going from a very large corporation like ExxonMobil to a family-owned business.
Right.
I like to think I was pretty helpful to him because he had never been in small business before, and I was like, it is another world.
world.
You have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially from such a large company like Exxon.
Yeah, but like and he's been great, and vice versa. Is like he knows a lot about process and procedures, which is helpful along the way, because sometimes when you're in a business and you're just kind of doing things by the seat of your pants, you're like, you should think about doing this, and I'm like, oh yes, that's a good idea.
Going back to that risk averse thing, like, maybe I should have some
Yeah,
steps here. That's
yeah.
really, really good. I appreciate the perspective there of you guys and the dynamic. What do you think from like a marriage specifically? Like, you guys, you talked about integration of life, but just the marriage and the honoring of two people. Obviously, you're different people, but you're both entrepreneurs, both CEOs, you're both, high performers, high achievers. The one thing, and I'll say this and I'll let you answer, but when he was on the show, he just had so much admiration and honor for you. The way that he talked about you was like that you were on top of the world and that he ran this company and that you were actually really the stud that needed to be on the show. And I remember that, like it was like I was just on the phone with him. So talk about that. Talk about maybe what being high performers inside of the marriage has looked like.
Well, first of all, he's my biggest fan, so I'm so honored to
Yeah.
that to be with him. We talked about humbleness. Like, that's why he's such a great leader, because he is very humble, because he is an amazing leader, as you probably know from the show. But he talks about everybody else except for himself. He is, the fact that he just jumped into coffee, didn't know the industry, and 5 years later, he's a walking, talking coffee expert. People that meet him are like, think that he's been in the business for 20 plus years,
Right.
and so he needs to toot his own horn, but I'll do it for him. So
That's right. That's right.
but we're newlyweds. We've been married for a little over 7 years now, so we're kind of newlyweds, and I don't know if I don't think he shared this with you in the show, but one of the reasons, there are several reasons, but one of the reasons for me asking my business partner back in 2016 to buy my shares of the company was to run off and get married. It was sort of like the next stage in my life. I met Craig, and he was the guy that I never thought existed. And,
Yeah.
I was like, here's a person I want to grow old with. Like, I didn't think that person existed. And, and I have this very successful company, but, maybe it's time for the next step and next stage in my life. And so, that's how that all went down is, I left my company, and Craig and I went off and got married. um, and so it was the best decision I made in my life. I can tell you that right now. And you know, I think both of us are very driven and determined people, but but I think thankfully we both have a lot of good, we have a lot of the same hobbies. Like I just mentioned, we love hiking,
Sure.
we love to bike, we love to be outdoors. So, even though we're high performers, we are able to kind of step back and, like life, we're not going to be on our deathbed and say, I should have worked one more day. You have to enjoy, every day. And that's what we do. So,
Yeah, and it sounds like you enjoy each other. Is that
we
is that
do.
part of the
Yeah, we do.
equation?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I think, like there's, especially with, COVID has been super stressful running businesses, especially, in the coffee and food business. So yeah, if we didn't enjoy each other, there, I don't know if we'd still be here.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I have one last question here for you, Carla. You've given us some amazing insights. Thank you for that little personal peel back there with Craig. I think that, again, that you guys are just really honoring with each other, and I wanted to point that out to the listeners. My last question here for you is, if you had the opportunity to go back in time and whisper to the younger Carla, what would you tell her?
Ooh, there's so many things.
Yeah.
One thing I would whisper in my ear is join the Air Force at high school. So I was one of those sort of rebellious teenagers who, thought I knew everything, and I didn't go to college and I didn't go in the service. I goofed around for many years, and then, I luckily one day woke up and said, "What am I doing?" And I went to the Air Force recruiter and said, "Sign me up." But if I could go back in time, I should have went right after high school. That would have been the best thing for me. Luckily it all worked out, but there was probably a few years there of, I didn't need to go through. So
Yeah.
I would like to go back and tell my younger
There's some
self
bad decisions in there.
yeah, don't be so stubborn and just go to, yeah.
Yeah, I think that message is clear. Starting earlier, don't be so stubborn. I think that you've dropped several really powerful things that even we can take away, because we have these same moments even now. Like whether it's the next business, or you taking an opportunity to be CEO, or Craig taking the opportunity to be in a brand new industry. Like we have these moments where we can look back and, to your point, go, I should do this, or I shouldn't wait, or I shouldn't, fill in the blank. So I appreciate that. How can the listener find you as an individual if they want to reach out to you as an entrepreneur, just pick your brain, get to know you, or your company? Give us clear directions on if we listening today have some sort of a contract that needs your help, or some sort of connection in the government. How can we get them to you?
Sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Carla James. That's the best way to contact me. And then the company is Solidus Technical Solutions. So you can email me at Carla with a C at solidus-ts.com, or you can visit our website, which is solidus-ts.com. And I would be happy to connect with anybody, whether it's on just a networking level, or you have some engineering needs.
Yeah, love that. You've been incredible. You have a track record that speaks for itself, but I'm so glad I got to hear the story behind it all. And for the listener, you guys got plenty. So I hope that you were taking some notes. And Carla, thank you for being here. Blessings to you, your family, your team, amazing people that are doing amazing things. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe: that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.